not quite there as yet. The meeting is being recorded as Vivian has just started recording. So let me share my screen while I can. We're still on Zoom. It's going away, but we're still on Zoom for this particular meeting. So I'm gonna share the presentation with you right now.
Excuse me, is that the end of the public comment?
Yes.
Okay, because my name is Mandisa Leachman. I'm the Berkeley Arts Magnet PTA president. I just wanted to have a real brief comment.
Vivian, were you listed for public comment?
No, she didn't she didn't make herself aware. What you can do is you can send me an email with your public comment and we'll make it part of the record.
So you're gonna send us an email then, okay?
Okay, so you said to send an email?
Yeah, to Vivian Ferguson at berkeley.net. So I'm sharing my screen and this is our meeting for the 15th of May. And as I said, we thought this was going to be the last meeting, but it's not. While our board members, not all of them are in the meeting, some of them, they don't participate and they don't vote, but they're active supporters. And I'm sure if I checked everybody's box, we'll find our board members. We've gone through the meeting protocols and everyone should be familiar with the requests. And then also with participation, we can make sure that leave your screen on, rename yourself, and remember only SBAC members can vote. We're not going to be at the voting stage today, but we're hoping to be there at the upcoming meetings. So we have to remember it's only the SBAC representatives and the USD staff can engage in discussions. And then for voting, it's just the SBAC members. Vivian, did you need to take roll call before? You're taking it as, okay. All right, so let me go to the next. I'm hoping this doesn't. 1 second. Let me go in slideshow mode. I mean, this makes it easier. Oh, while that's loading. So again, I really appreciate everybody's input and everybody's point of view and everybody's comments. But again, remembering the reminder is that this is a budget advisory committee and it's a superintendent's budget advisory committee. And I know everybody's voice matters and we want to get as much input as we can. But at the end of the day, it is a budget advisory committee and we will benefit from your input. And what we will be doing, we will be presenting the board with SBAC's vote on various proposals, staff's vote on various proposals, and ultimately what makes it into the budget is what the board votes on. So a lot of process, final decision is the board, but it's a healthy exchange of ideas and discussions, which is important for our equity lens and allocating our resources. Let's see, and again, we're grounded in our mission and in our 4 E's: excellence, equity, engagement, and enrichment. And this is our agenda that we shared earlier. There was a slight change to the agenda, but this is what we hope to cover today. So we did our welcome, well, we didn't do a welcome, but we did our public comments. So thanks for everybody who participated and shared their view. I just want to state that someone had talked about freezing the bus driver positions. That proposal is off the table and I'll be elaborating further. But thanks, Sean, who came and made public comments. Your points were well taken. We're going to talk briefly about the governor's May revise. Then we're going to follow up and update staffing and program proposals. We're going to revisit budget reduction strategies. There is some new considerations that we're working on. We're going to start putting the whole thing together. We've been doing things in bits and pieces. So we're going to be looking at the overall picture. And then we're going to be looking at additional meetings on the 22nd and the 29th, starting at 4 and ending at 5:30. Any comments or questions on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, and I can't see your hand, so if you want to make a comment, please raise your hand. So, and Vivian, you let me know if anybody has raised their hands. So our fiscal forecast, Emily is our executive director of fiscal services. Our hands are now full. We're trying to adopt a budget, in the middle of getting all this new information. And we're working on our interim audit. So this is the time of year, and of course, we're also working on our current, doing our journal entries and so on, just in terms of our operations. So we're stretched thin at the moment, and we're also participating in negotiations. So lots of irons in the fire, lots of work ahead, and lots of deadlines. So I'm really grateful for Emily and her input and her team. And I'm also working on these deadlines and trying to get our budget together. I'm hearing dings. So let's talk about the May revise very briefly. The main workshop that we go to will be on the 21st. I think I had it listed incorrectly as the 17th in the prior meeting, but we attended CASBA's meeting today, which was just an hour long, an overview. And I can summarize what I found out in the meeting today, and I did some screenshots from the workshop as well. So, and the governor does addresses the budget 3 times for the year. He does an initial proposal in January. He does a May revision in May, and then he adopts the budget. He's required to adopt the budget before June 15th. So the issue with that is we would have taken our budget to the board, because we have to take it to the board before June 15th and get their approval of our LCAP and our budget. So at that point, we don't have the final governor's budget. So when he comes up with this final budget, if there are significant changes, we have to do what's known as a 45-day revise to our budget to the board. So this is step 2 in the whole proposal and the whole process for the governor's budget. So what's new in the May revise? So the governor acknowledged that there is a higher deficit than the January proposal. And we work with the Legislative Analyst Office. That's another arm that looks at our budget. They think that our deficit is a lot higher than the governor is stating. So they have not come to an accord in terms of what the state's deficit is, but the governor has acknowledged that there is a higher deficit than he had forecasted in January. And how is he addressing that deficit? He's doing one-time solutions to an ongoing problem, an ongoing deficit. So that's not good budgeting, because you can't use your savings to fix a shortfall, which is basically what the governor is doing. What has come out of the May revise is that there's a COLA, it's increased. It's now 1.07, up from 0.76 at January. But this COLA does not give us a significant amount of money. It's not a windfall, and it's barely enough to cover our ongoing increases in expenses based on whether it's our PERS or other ongoing expenses, our electricity, keeping on the lights. So we do have a 1.07. We're not sure if it's funded at this point. If it is funded, it's going to give us an additional $300,000 in our LCFF funding, but other programs will also get the benefit of the COLA. So good news, he's not reducing what we got, bad news, we're not getting a ton of money. It's not a windfall, but they're not cuts at this point to the education budget. So this is this is a snapshot of the workshop that we attended today. And he talks about the COLA compared to 0.76. And this is where he talks about it being applied to our categorical program. So special education would get the 1.07, our nutrition program. Of course, we are the LCFF that the LCFF, as well as another part of the LCFF called the multiplier, will also benefit from the 1.07% COLA. And you may remember that in recent times, our COLA was as much as 8%. Well, those days are now behind us. We're now in very minimally funded COLA arena. Good news. The governor has decided to not only continue the universal meals, this is where the state is subsidizing the federal rate so that all meals to our students are free. He's actually increasing it. So at January, it was 122.2 million, and he's proposing to fund it at $298.3 million, and it may revise. So that's really good news for our program, our nutrition program. It's benefited a lot from the universal meals, and it's more than self-sufficient in terms of operations. So this is really good news, and we're all grateful that our students will be continuing to receive free meals. And that is not only the comment that was made in the meeting was that it doesn't only benefit our lower income or unduplicated students, it's benefiting all students to make sure that they have a free meal. Let's see, and then the other one, this is just other May revision proposals. We had benefited from our Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. So there was talk of a needs assessment being done for the 24-25 year. It's delayed to 25-26. There's also an arts and music instructional discretionary block grant. We had mentioned this a lot last year. The agencies, that's us, we can report final expenses by September 30th, 2026. And what has not been deferred, what has not been proposed is deferrals. And this is a cash flow tactic where instead of us getting our money in month 1, we will get it in month 2. So if you're on the edge from a cash flow point of view, it's going to impact you. If you have enough cash to kind of tide you over, it's a deferral or just pushing out the period when you'd actually get your cash. So there is talk about, there was consideration about funding, additional funding to support a 1 to a 10K ratio as staffing ratio, but that is not been proposed. So if there was additional staffing ratio, if there was additional funding for TK, the staffing ratio would have gone to 1 to 10. I believe it's now 1 to 12. And Jill can correct me. But this is what came out of a very brief summary from CASBO that I attended today. I will unpack and get more information from school services. And they have like our COLA for this year and the 2 subsequent years. So they have information that we need to actually build our budget. And of course, a lot of this information is still being developed by the Department of Finance and the legislature. And the legislative committee is developing a response. And of course, we're also always lobbying calls to action to share CASBO's perspective. And of course, I mentioned earlier that the governor needs to sign the budget by June 15th. And we're hoping that that he continues this trend or at least improves this trend and that there are no cuts to the education budget. Any questions or any comments on the May revise? No, Matt Mara has raised his hand. Yes, Matt.
Hi, I just wondered, did the next year's COLA get adjusted at all, or is it the same as it was?
Did you just come in to the
Um,
meeting?
no,
So
I've
the
been here.
COLA is one point oh
No,
seven.
no, no, sorry, I meant the out year COLA.
That's what I said. I just mentioned that we don't have the dartboard
Oh,
from school
oh, I see.
services. I only have this short meeting that I went to from Casbo.
Got
So
it.
I
Thank
will have that information for you on the after the 21st, which is when this is not the school services program. This was Casbo's. So when I go to the school services workshop, we will get enough information for the out years, which we would depend on to build our budget, which is what I mentioned earlier.
Sorry about that. Thanks.
So is Anika here? I can't see.
I love that. I love to just like let you go on and on and on. I've been here for a while. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this meeting. And thank you, Pauline, for that very brief update of what we think we should expect for the May revise. And we know that we'll be getting more detailed information and confirmation after your meeting later this week. So again, good afternoon, everyone. We wanted to just start with a couple of follow-up and updates. We appreciate all of the voting and input that you've given on some of our proposals. And we know there were a couple proposals that we have brought forth to you, either in phase 1, 2, or 3, that we did not advance for one reason or another. So we wanted to come back and bring some of those back to you for consideration, but also to give you some updates on some of those. And so next slide, please. Reminding you all that we are engaging in this process by really trying to stay aligned to these budget reduction strategies, again, in no perfect order, but definitely kind of in phases. And we are have done a lot of work in those first 6 strategies, if you will. And we know that at some point we might still need to look at programs and positions. But at this point, we've done a good job in collaboration with you to make a lot of budget balancing solutions that have come far away from people and far from programs. We also want to remind you all of our core values of resource allocation. Next slide, and really applaud how we as a team have been working together to make sure that we're evaluating all of the proposals that we bring forth against these 6 resource allocation values, which you all know by heart, so I'm not going to read to you. So we're going to move on to the update. The next slide is going to be staffing updates. You might recall that we came to you all twice. One earlier in March to talk about the March 15th notices, and then there was a confirmation of those notices that came before the board in May. And so Sam is here to give you all an update on where we are. Again, with that strategy of really trying to stay as far away from people and programs as possible and making consolidation and reductions of people and programs. The very last thing that we do, we have some news we want to share with you. So with that, I'm going to transition to you, Sam. Go back one.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I think
All right.
yeah. Is Sam here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. So the list on this page on the left side of it is the original March list, which was the long list of all of the positions that we had to take to the board. And then we updated our list to the shorter list that is on the right. Still included some OFI specialists. At that time, it included PTA positions, some cooking and gardening positions, a position in purchasing, a position at Berkeley High School, and some school campus aides and school service assistant positions. At this time, I can tell you that the PTA positions are all safe. They've all received rescission letters, meaning that we are not laying off anybody who was hired this year from the PTA. Because we were able to get all that funding confirmed. And so those positions are safe. We are hoping that we still may have some other rescissions that come. But today last night technically was the deadline for us to give final notices. So we have had to give final notices, but again, we can still rescind if we do find funding for these programs.
Any comments before we move on to the next slide? So Anika, did you want to introduce this or, Vicky Davis has her hand.
Yeah, Vicky's hands up, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to note for the record that based on this list, some of the positions that we gave notice to, particularly like the school service assistants and the school campus aides, are some of the lowest paid positions across the district. In addition, you know, we've been looking at some of these proposals for several weeks, where our recommendation was not to make cuts in certain areas, but they keep coming back. And I really wish that we had something different had come back, like central office positions that are not student facing, or we have several TSA positions potentially that could be looked at on whether or not there's duplication of services there. Versus these people that are on the ground dealing with students every day that are also some of the lowest paid positions. So it's not very cost effective savings. So I just want to make that opinion be known.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Vicky. And I don't know, Sam, if you want to just remind the team of who had to be noticed and by March 15th and May 15th and why. But also want to clarify, Vicky, that we have a number of TSAs in our district office, but I also know we have a number of managerial and leadership positions, and there's different rules in terms of notification of those positions. So this list does not mean that, again, that very bottom strategy is to explore reductions in people and programs and positions. So all that to say that this doesn't mean that we might not come back should we see the need with some other positions that we need to reevaluate. But again, Sam, I don't know if you want to give a response to the school campus aides, or Jill even, or if you all want to, or if that satisfies you, Vicky, we can move on. Okay.
She gave 2 thumbs up, so I can just clarify that unfortunately, because we had to make a decision on the list of what positions back in March, we hadn't had a lot of these discussions and the input from SBAC at that point in terms of a lot of this. Again, I believe Jill shared at a previous meeting the timelines and how they do not work well together. But we agree we would prefer not to have to cut any positions. But classified, we do have to notice them in March, or we do not get a chance at all to lay off the position. So we also only picked positions that we had specific reasons for. Either the funding was going away or was in question, or in the case of the school campus aides or the school service assistants, it was to right size something that we had been doing that was not fitting the formula that we had as historical practice in the district. And so we were right sizing back to that original formula.
Sam, what was the original number? What was the long list versus the list now?
So we had originally 83 people who were getting noticed, and we only had 26 who got final notices. And we're hoping that we'll be able to even reduce that further.
Thank you, Vicky, for that question. Go ahead, Pauline.
Okay. So this is the I had put a note in the chat. We have revisited, staff has revisited this proposal and gotten further clarification from the transportation team in terms of these 2 bus driver positions. So staff, we have removed this from our proposal list because there is a determination that they will assist with driver shortages. And so these 2 bus driver positions are no longer being frozen. And the proposal was to freeze it for 1 additional year. So they've been frozen now for 2 years. So hopefully we would see an improvement in operations based on the fact that these are no longer frozen. And this is contrary to our original understanding that it would not impact operations. So so it's been removed. Any questions on that? Okay, next slide.
Rebecca has her hand up. Pauline.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Rebecca.
Just real quick, I heard something in the public comment that I wanted to just ask about, which was the number of contracted drivers for field trips, etc. And I wondered, do we have a number there? I don't, because I just wondered about that relative to our thinking about bringing more and more in-house and what you just shared.
Well, I could get that information for you. I don't have that information, but I know a lot of the field trips are offered when the bus drivers are actually doing school to home to school transportation. And we have increased their hours so that they can be available. So I think the transportation team do the best they can in terms of organizing the schedule. Sean, who spoke, she's a router, a dispatcher. So and they plan their the routes and the timing to be able to accommodate the field trips, but of course they can't accommodate all field trips. And the other driver or the other companies that they use, they have to be vetted by the transportation department. But I can get some more information for you, Rebecca, and share that. Hi, Matt.
I was just gonna say, as someone who schedules field trips, we're always told to go to the transportation department first. And if they're unavailable, then, we go to Michael's pretty much. But, it's usually, at least, especially at the high school, given the times, crossover, any dismissal times at any other sites, the transportation department generally cannot accommodate.
Thanks, Matt. Any other discussions before we go on? So this is an update. We had already presented this information, I think in phase 3. It's on the next slide. But we're visiting site subs, just reminding everyone, and this was from a presentation in phase 3. So we talked about the type of subs. We have daily subs, long-term subs. And Sam, I don't know if you want to speak about this, but we had already presented this, so I'm comfortable just kind of sharing this again. Chime in if you have anything extra that you want to add. So these are the types of subs, the salary rates and the benefits. And on the next slide, this should be a refresher for you guys because we presented this at phase 3. So we have positives, they've been essential to meet legal deadlines. They support with intervention. We don't have to split classes. They know the schedules, the kids, the teachers. It's an important flexibility to cover multiple teachers every day, over a day. And they're especially useful and helpful for teacher callouts after 7:30 a.m. So lots of positives and lots of benefits. And then some of the options that we had looked at, continue offering what we currently have, or limit those to sub permits only, not hire any site subs for 24-25, or a mixture of the above. So
Can I just chime in, Pauline? Because I
yeah,
think
sure.
after showing the team the list of all the benefits, somebody might say, then why are we even talking about this? We definitely know that our site subs provide a number of benefits, and we also know that our sub budget. So there's the salaries for the site subs, but then there's also the amount that we pay to cover daily and hourly subs, et cetera. And that number continues to grow. And so we're exploring this because the site subs, as a response itself, is not necessarily helped us with cost savings. So I just wanted to put that out there, that the site subs is one bucket for substitute expenses, but there's also the daily subs that we have a pretty significant expense for.
Right, and I'll be sharing that further. We have like an update on the budget. Mildred?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Just a quick question regarding the certificated site subs. Will these subs just be at the sites just in case? Like, what will they be doing? I'm curious.
So we have had these positions for 3 years now. We created them during COVID. And what they do is cover whenever we have teachers who are absent or teachers who need to attend meetings during the workday. And so, yes, I guess you could classify it as they hang out, but the majority of them are busy all day long, either covering classes or doing other things at the school site working with students.
So can I ask further, like, what are the other things? So let's just say that there isn't anyone for them to sub for, then what would they be doing?
They could pull small groups of students to work on specific skill sets. They could be relieving a teacher for bathroom breaks or that kind of thing. So there are numerous different things that they could be doing. And we have still, even with having these site subs and everything else, we have about an 80% coverage rate of our our certificated assignments every day.
And
One
under
of
no
the data that-
circumstance would these teachers be doing any type of classified work, correct?
Correct. They would not be doing classified work.
Thank you.
Matt has his hand up. I don't know. if he
Yeah, I
can-
was just gonna say one important function is just to make sure that we can be in attendance for IEP meetings, and those do take a significant amount of time. And so those are oftentimes scheduled during the day, and site subs will make sure that there's coverage. Because nobody takes a sub job for 1 hour, right? If you're a daily sub.
Right. Right. Lindsay?
Hi, I want to chime in and agree with Matt about the IEP and 504 coverage at schools. It's been a lot easier to schedule end of year meetings in this season of like May when things are really crazy. So it's been much easier to get a part 2 when meetings go over. And then additionally, as we move forward into reimagining our MTSS system, our multi-tiered system of support, a site sub would allow teacher collaboration time for teachers to go and observe other classrooms and to really expand on those professional learning circles. So while right now, sometimes the site subs might not have realized their full potential, it allows us to really implement in a much more collaborative and kind of in community way. So they do have value past their the numbers on a page. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I'm gonna push us on to the, we have a little bit more information on this. The cost of the hourly subs, this talks about like, if we had an hourly sub, for the entire year, it costs $45,000. However, our FTE, they're usually very experienced teachers in the sub positions. So they will be at the higher level. So they may cost us anywhere from, I don't know, Sam, like 150, 160 and up. It will be at the higher end for our teachers. So I have an update on our budget for certificated subs on the next slide. So
Mildred
this
has
is
her
not
hand
from,
up.
sorry?
Mildred has her. had her
Oh,
hand
hi,
up.
Mildred.
Hi, I'm sorry again. Is there any data that you can provide on these site subs?
In terms of,
Just like what they will be doing, like how effective is it? I'm just curious about, like, in case there isn't something for them to do, there isn't a teacher out or something. When Samantha just said like hanging around, I just want to know like the data on how needed, like what is going on, what are they doing?
Yep. So one data, and I'm not sure if Jill is on, Ms. Mildred, first of all,
Thank
hi.
you.
One data that I think we are, if we haven't collected it, we definitely have a plan, is to work with our school leaders to really get a sense of how they are using their site subs at their particular site. I think, we all haven't been site principals can like generalize, and I think Sam was doing that, like, oh, this is what they probably do, right? But we are looking to get that specific data. I will say that what we know is that some sites have somebody in the classroom every day, and then other sites, right, have maybe less vacancies or less absences, and so we'll be using them in different ways. So we can definitely circle back, share that data with SBAC.
And hours in a class, like how many hours they spend in a class when they're doing this work? Thank you.
okay. So this next slide has a little bit more information on what the costs for the subs. So right now, I think we have 7 subs on temporary contracts and 4 are on permanent contracts. And I had a little blurb that Sam had shared. So right now, when we're looking at our certificated subs, we're looking at $1.4 million for subs that are FTE, regardless of the type of contract they're on. Then we have another pot for when staff, when they're out ill or out on maternity leave or various leaves. That's 2.1 million. And then we have this other bucket, which I think was trying to capture the subs that are daily subs that are not FTE. So we're looking at $3.9 million for a very important cause. But we're thinking that we could possibly consider alternative funding sources or restructuring the way the services are presented, and not fully baked. We have a little bit more to share with you, but $3.9 million for us to substitute for an existing positions is a lot. So I think we haven't really looked at this. It doesn't come up in when we're doing allocations for sites. It kind of has gone under the radar. So I think it's important to know that for our daily subs, we have increased our budget by 1.7 million, and then we're not seeing a decrease in what used to be our daily 6 subs. That keeps going up as well. So Rebecca and then Matt.
I just wondered about the dollars allocated at the site level. So I know each school has X amount of dollars to make decisions with. And is that a piece of what could be addressing these ongoing site subs as opposed to
The general fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what the general fund pays for, and we're open to other funding models. In fact, we have a proposal for using an alternative funding source. But right now, when we're allocating resources to the sites know what they're getting for classroom teachers and know what they're getting for various positions. We have never really allocated out the FTE to each site for site subs. And as Sam mentioned, this came up 3 years ago, so it's still fairly new, but we have not cost out the impact to our budget. So this is an attempt to look at that and realize that it's there. It's a cost of $1.7 million. It's an important use of funds, obviously, but at the same time, this is for substitute positions and not necessarily for regular positions. So Matt.
Sorry, real quick, before we just wanted to add, just full transparency, y'all. We know that we are trying to make some really big decisions in a short amount of time. And to Lindsay's point, like looking at numbers on the screen doesn't always tell you the whole story. To Ms. Mildred's point, is that I'm sure there's lots of questions about what these folks do and how do they support sites. We will have that data, but it will likely not be to what you asked for, Ms. Mildred, like how many hours, because that would require tracking some time ago. The other thing is that when we've been having conversations about this particular thing, I'm a principal and a teacher first and forever. So I know the value of having site subs from the teacher perspective. I also know as a school leader how it helps to have an extra set of hands and hearts that actually knows the school as a part of the community, et cetera, right? We were looking at, though, the fact that despite having these positions, the sub cost hasn't gone down. We're aware, though, that we are still kind of coming out of COVID where we were required to, stay at home for 5 days and 7 days. And so we just so you know, we're not like just looking at that line and not thinking about the context and all the nuances that have to be considered. And so I wanted to say that before the other folks speak. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there's also like a hidden cost, and I don't know how this shows up. That actually is a savings. Because if there is no sub, then you have to pay teachers a much higher rate, or anyone, certificated for misprep. And so that is an invisible savings that happens here that doesn't show up in these numbers. And that is, financially speaking, one of the reasons why we have site subs is because, at least for the ones that are paid the daily rate, there's a savings by having them at the site rather than paying for all the missed preps when there is no sub.
So say that again, Matt. You're saying that there's a cost for the daily subs. Did you say that?
There's a saving that doesn't show up. Well, I don't know how it shows up because I don't see what's behind the numbers, but the savings and how it's billed, right? But for any teacher at the high school that subs for one period, they're paid 0.2 FTE. It's in the contract. If you're an elementary school teacher, you have a missed prep or a release teacher, or you have to go shift what you're doing, you're paid 0.2, right, of your day per diem. Right. And so by having the site sub there, you are reducing, and I just know what was happening. Again, this is in COVID times, and the amount of unfilled absences that needed coverage. It was multiple positions every day. Right. And, and when Samantha says that we have like an 80% coverage rate, what that really means is that we are paying people, right, per diem where we don't have subs. And if that number was to go down, right, in terms of the coverage rate, and I think it was much lower before, then you're paying it somewhere else, and you're actually paying it more.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Vicky? Oh, where did Vicky go?
Sorry. Yeah, I would also just say sustainability wise, another thing that we need to think about. And I know Malcolm X might be an outlier because it's the largest elementary school, but we have 2 site subs and they are substituting in the classroom every single day, both of them. And we still have unfilled positions. There is a sub shortage out there. And so when there is not a sub to fill in for a classroom, similar to what Matt's saying, those kids are farmed out to other teachers. So, my 4th grader's class, she might be in the other 4th grade class raising, that class by 5 or 6 kids, or even going to a different grade classroom when there is not a sub. And so if we take away the site subs, I want to think about how that's going to affect direct learning when we can't fill. We don't have enough subs to hire. We only have 80% coverage right now. It's because we have 20% of daily hourly sub positions that we can't get filled. And so the site subs, I feel like, was the solution to be able to at least guarantee the filling of some of those absences that we have on a regular basis, maybe still, left over from COVID.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mildred?
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing, and I'm gonna and I will leave this alone. I understand. I understand because, and Maddie is actually correct, when there aren't a sub, then you can pay a contract teacher more if they have to sub for another class. I get that. I guess, my concern is because I have seen it happen where we have had a site sub end up working in a classified position because there wasn't anything to do. So there was a need for, let's just say, a classified safety officer. And then we had that site sub working in that position. So that is a concern. But then more importantly than that, it's just that I know with us having to lay off OFI staff, but then we're talking about having subs, that's just a concern of mine. So I'm just saying, okay, well, wait a minute. What are we doing here? If we're talking about laying off OFI staff that are working directly with our students, that's needed and then extremely important. But then at the same time, we're talking about having possible OFI staff, having subs in classroom in case. You know what I mean? It's the wording that's a concern. But at the same time, I can see the need on both sides. You know what I mean? But I know that this OP staff is important. So that's my, I just want to see where is the need. And that's why I'm asking for the data. So I appreciate you guys understanding. Thank you.
Thanks, Mildred.
If you didn't ask for the data, we might be judging you. I mean, I'm glad that you asked for data because all the decisions we make should be, that's one of our values somewhere up there. I don't remember. But yeah, being data informed. So I appreciate you asking that question. And we were working on that anyway. So we got you.
Yes.
So just know, y'all,
we're gonna
come back to site subs. Again, sometimes what people think when we talk about budget balancing is like they go straight to elimination. And I think Ms. Lindsay said it, like it's a chance for us to be creative and innovative. So do not panic. You know, we're going to come back to this and share with you some of the things that we're playing with, but we wanted to come back to this because it was something that we presented, and all the conversations that is happening right now, trust me, we've had hours and hours of this, plus trying to figure out and grapple with both the things that are obvious on the slide, but also the nuances and the hidden costs and hidden savings, et cetera, that Matt and some others have brought up. So we're going to come back to this one in our considerations section. We're going to keep on chugging along with updates. So we've updated you on the May 15th notices. We've updated you on the removal of the freezing of the bus drivers. And now we just updated you on the site subs. We will now move on because there was a presentation the last two meetings around LCFF general fund reserves. And so Jill is here to update you on that.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here on this beautiful day. Just wanted to update you. So members of this committee weighed in on a recommendation for us to share with the board around the use of the LCFF general fund reserve. So we shared that information with the board at the May 1st board meeting. And the board did approve the use of the LCFF general fund reserve in an amount not to exceed $500,000 as a one-time expenditure, which we fully acknowledge, is going to, help us bridge into next year, but is not a long-term solution. So we have a recommendation. We had a recommendation that we had shared with the board to use those funds to preserve some of the current LCAP expenses, as we had shared with this group. The board, there are directors who have asked us to review that recommendation with PAC and DLAC. PAC and DLAC are going to be taking a look at the draft LCAP at their meetings tomorrow, and we're going to share information, if you go to the next slide, about our recommendation for using that LCFF general fund reserve. Some of you may have been able to participate in either our in-person engagement sessions in January or in our LCAP strategic plan survey. We got 1,200 responses this year, which was great. In addition, our PAC and DLAC have been extremely generous with their time and thoughtfulness in providing recommendations for the LCAP. Consequently, we are looking at a new LCAP goal around parent and family engagement and involvement. And we believe that our OFI team is a critical lever for that. We're adding actions to the LCAP that involve family and community engagement in terms of building relational trust, capitalizing on the talents and assets of our community to help us serve our students, and then building the capacity of all of us as a district system to build and support our relationships with our families. So what you see in that top right-hand side, we have a current allocation or current available budget in the LCAP to support $360,000 of that expense. And we're making a recommendation to fund the rest of the OFI team with the LCAP reserve, which again, fully acknowledging is currently a one-time expenditure. So we'll be taking that to PAC and DLAC, and then we'll be sharing their feedback as we present the draft LCAP to the board on, I almost said January, May 29th. That's the public hearing of I wish it was January. We had a lot more time.
We need that time.
And I really wish that the state budget cycles were done in January so that we would have clean information about making these decisions. But, we're in a tough situation because of the significant budget reduction that we're looking to make. And so we do want to make sure that we can prioritize that.
Lindsay, go back one, Pauline, please. Lindsay has a question or comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as the PAC representative, I would just like to point out that the $611,000 was slush fund kind of COVID stuff. So it was unspent monies that then we reallocated and spent. So I think that in our mindset, we have to look at that 600K as money that was one-time allocation and not something that we have to dig ourselves out of. And again, that might mean that we're being creative about how we resource things through the supplemental fund. But I think that, 5.7 or $5.8 million is a nice chunk of change to spend on our unduplicated students, and we should be able to provide adequate and indeed improved and beneficial services to these students with that money. I just like to think of it as as shifting our thinking about, we're not digging out of an 800K hole, we're digging out of a 180K hole.
Yep, appreciate that. Thank you, Lindsay. Miss Mildred?
Hi, Ms. Jill. Thank you so much for this presentation. I appreciate you also trying to, really do your best in helping, the family engagement, the OP positions. I just have two questions. The first question is, for the PAC and DLAC meetings, are those open to other people or just the committee members?
Those, oh, was that the first question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I do. Yeah, so I'll take, or I didn't know if you were giving me both at the same time, but I'm gonna take that question. Those are public meetings. The agendas and the links are posted on the district website.
Thank you so much. And the second question is, when you speak on unduplicated students, can you just give me a little bit more information on that, please?
Yeah, so our unduplicated students those are identified under the LCFF provision as our students who who are our English language learners, our foster youth, and our students socioeconomically disadvantaged students.
Thank you so much. I understand that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we're gonna keep going. It's 5:02. Remember, we're still on updates. The next update is mine, and I will be brief. Wanted to come back to you all. The last couple of SBAC meetings we've talked about or spent some time. Next slide, please, Pauline.
Hold on, I'm trying to find it.
Oh,
I just
sorry.
lost my mouse. Hold on.
It's a cute
Oh,
slide,
God.
so I got clip art and everything. But at the last couple of meetings, we've talked about and looked at some of our programs. We specifically have focused on those programs that support students and families in getting to college, and also have had in previous meetings conversations about contracts. The update is simple. The update is that we have asked and are asking our partners who are providing those programs to our students to bring to us more than one proposal for us to consider as we think about budget reduction strategies or budget balancing strategies. Does not always mean elimination, but it might mean reduction, or it might mean do it differently. We're asking our partners to think in that way. And so they're going to be coming to us with multiple, at least two scenarios of what partnership and programming can look like with them. That can be a reduction or a change in the number of students served. That can be like, hey, we might be able to stop this service for a year because Berkeley can do it, or whatever it is. So just wanted you all to know that we are not spending a lot of time on this tonight, but we are in robust conversations with our partners. We've heard your feedback, we've shared your questions, and we plan to come back to you with those proposals with the hope that we're able to still provide the robust programming and services to our students, particularly our affinity groups, but also do it against the backdrop of budget balancing that needs to happen. So that's my update. The next one is you, Pauline. Cooking and gardening.
Okay. So let me go back. Hold on. That's what happens when you have to do two things. So I had met with Ben just in terms of his funding updates, and unfortunately he did not get the Allen Foundation grant. That was a $250,000 that he thought he was. Mildred, do you have a question, or is that from the last question?
Sorry, ma'am. I'll lower it. Thank you.
So So we're still waiting to find out about the grant from Nutrition Services, the carryover from the prior year's Strong Workforce Grant. That's pretty much shored up. But the general fund proposal is still to fund the program for $100,000 and then to allow him to use his carryover for 23-24. So we're not sure what that amount is going to be. So not good news about the grant. I know he met with Sam, and I don't know, Sam, if you want to talk a little bit more about the proposal that he had made in terms of reducing staff FTE. Is Sam still here?
I'm still here.
Okay, so did you want to I don't think Ben is at the meeting, so.
Yeah, so what we did was we went through all of his positions, and we recognized the need to have the program touch as many students as possible at as many sites as possible. So we looked at reductions at different places, small little tiny pieces of FTE to equal the total instead of cutting a whole position. And so the letters that went out for the final notices were representative of those smaller cuts that add up to the amount of FTE, but instead of us cutting like a whole 0.73 FTE position, we looked at taking tiny pieces from multiple positions so that we still had staffing and the program able to be functional at multiple sites. And so no site is going to be without some gardening and cooking, but we did still unfortunately have to make some reductions in the staffing.
And as I mentioned, the May revise, the state is going to continue the Universal Meal Program, which benefits our nutrition services program. And they're still looking at the grant for $300,000 that they had proposed. Not finalized as yet, but fingers crossed.
Vicky?
Vicky, have your hand up. Oh.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry, I keep unraising my hand instead of unmuting. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. So the general fund is still contributing 100,000 to gardening and cooking. However, at one point we had voted in favor of putting 300,000 in nutritional services budget. And I think that has since been reduced to 200,000. And I'm just wondering if that can move back up to the 260,000 or whatever, particularly because in the May revise, they're getting additional funding for the Universal Meal Program. And has that all been looked at and going back to that 300 target that we originally discussed?
Well, the 300 target was for us to reduce our contribution to that program by 300. So it wasn't to provide funding. We do currently provide 300. Staff had proposed that we actually use the nutrition services program to do that, to provide the 300,000. And after discussions, we revised that amount. Instead of reducing the program by 300, we were going to reduce it by 200. So therefore, the 100,000 would still come from the general fund.
Right.
We just received the information from the governor, and it's not a given that because nutrition services is getting the amount, nutrition services has to petition the state and the federal government to include the contribution to the nutrition, the garden and cooking program. So it's not an automatic, because there's funding, they're automatically going to get it. It's a process that Bonnie, I believe, shared with the group a few meetings ago, and she's still waiting to get the finalization from CD and the federal government whether they will sign off. She got the initial approval, but now she's waiting for written approval to fund the $300,000 that originally came from the general fund. So it was a funding swap. Did that answer your question, or did you have another question?
I have another question. So, just to clarify, it needs approval and we're still asking for approval for nutrition services to cover 300,000?
No,
Is
the
that-
nutrition services is totally separate. Nutrition services on their own will let us know what the determination is from CD and the federal government. What SBAC will be voting on is for us to reduce the budget reduction from 300 to 100. I'm not getting confused. So that's an item that staff will be bringing back, that SBAC will be voting on. And as a reminder, the final decision will be made by the board.
And so that reduction will be made without knowing whether or not nutrition services can cover it? If we vote yes on it, I guess?
Yeah, it's still up in the air. I mean,
Okay,
they got
and-
a verbal okay, but we're
And-
waiting for the official confirmation.
And was the reason we switched from 300 to 200 because we didn't feel that they could bear the cost of 300, or that we didn't think it would get approved?
Well, we looked at the 300 is a separate issue. We looked at his funding structure and determined that if we contributed 100,000 and then also gave him his carryover. So we're working to try and preserve this program. So we're looking at all these other funding sources. So this was our give in terms of trying to save the program. So. Yes, Steve?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think I remember a conversation where nutrition services was taking the 300, we were moving the expense. The district was still gonna pay 100. And then there was a question by one of the committee members that if the 300 gets approved by them and he gets that $250,000 grant, can we then reduce the 100 that the general fund was still gonna provide? And we were like, the answer was like, yeah, we'll look into that.
Right.
but
So we've since learned that this program, they were relying on a grant from the prior year. So we looked at his funding structure. So his funding structure has totally changed. He has lost a grant that he used to get from the strong workforce. He's still getting the grant from the soda tax. He went for funding for this private funding for 250, didn't get that. So I think Ben is being very proactive in terms of trying to find alternative funding sources. So staff is proposing that we give him the 100,000 plus his carryover so that we don't abandon the program or we don't cancel the program altogether. But I mean, we're now at the point where staff will make recommendations, SBAC will make their recommendations. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same recommendation. So. Did that answer everybody's question? Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide. So this is something that we had looked at, and this is what we'll be bringing back to you to actually vote on. And again, this is us, we'll be getting savings to ourselves for 200,000. It was revised from the 300. The 3.05 FTE, that's based on a formula that we have not adhered to for the last 2 years. So we want to now adhere to the formula. And I hear you, Vicky, that we keep bringing it back, and we will keep bringing it back because we want to adhere to the formula. That will give us $180,000. It's ongoing. Cooking and gardening is a one-off. It's a one-time funding. And what used to be the transportation, that's now zero because we actually changed it. So we're just reiterating the totals that we're looking at. Any questions on that? So overall, this is our
Hey,
consideration.
Pauline,
Yeah,
why is the cooking and gardening a one-time, the 200,000, right? Because
because Bonnie can, nutrition services can only fund the 300 on a one-time basis. So they had said, if they had said they could do it ongoing, ours would be an ongoing proposal. But remember when Bonnie presented to the, to the group, she made it one time because she wasn't sure of the universal program, and then she has to lobby every year to kind of get this funding. It's not an ongoing situation as yet.
Okay.
So this is a subtotal of the considerations that we looked at. And let's see what else. So now we're getting ready to talk about new considerations, and I'll turn it back over to Anika.
I don't know why she's giving it back to me. I'm just.
Oh,
gonna give it-
wait. No, it's me still. Sorry.
I was like, I'm gonna give it right back to you.
Sorry.
I do want to distinguish that.
I thought yours was before.
Yeah, she was ready to pass the mic. I just want to just keep making sure folks are keeping up. We first spent the first chunk of time just really looking at updates on things that we've discussed in previous meetings. Pauline just quickly reviewed some of the proposals that we will likely want to revisit. And now we're moving into some new considerations. These are not proposals yet. These are things that we are, we're kind of playing around with. So nothing's done. We just want to engage you in them and get your feedback. And we will come back with official proposals, phase 4, at our next meeting. Go ahead, Pauline.
So it's actually me. So sorry about that. So for the site subs, I think Mildred or someone wanted a little bit more information. So this talks about the 7 subs on temporary contracts for 23-24. The 4 on permanent contracts, and I discussed the cost of those. So what we're looking at, we have some carryover funds that can be used to fund our site subs. So I'm proposing, we're considering looking at 3 FTE to be funded by carryover funds, and that will give approximately $390,000 in savings to the unrestricted general fund. And as Anika says, it's not a proposal, it's something that we're proposing. We're just thinking about it at this time. We're considering it. Nicole, hi Nicole.
Hello. So thanks. I apologize I couldn't raise my hand when we were talking about this earlier, but I was just thinking about, that from costing this site sub situation, you were talking about how these tend to be the more senior teachers and then therefore more expensive, but isn't the true cost of this program more an entry-level teacher? Because I'm assuming that they're more experienced teachers because they have seniority. But if these positions didn't exist, those teachers would probably be somewhere else in the district. And so if these positions didn't exist, we'd actually have fewer new teachers. Does that make sense? So isn't like the real cost of this program new teacher cost?
I'll let Sam
sense?
address. I think we're looking at who are currently in the positions, but I'll let Sam talk about it.
Yeah, so you are correct that if we didn't have site subs, we would be pushing out younger teachers or not hiring as many younger teachers coming in. What this is based off of is looking at, we have the 4 who are currently on contract who are working as site subs. And we are looking at whether or not they are going back to classrooms next year, or if we have site subs staying as site subs. And so that's part of what we've based some of this proposal or considerations on. But the reality is that, yes, if we don't have site subs, then we potentially would have less younger teachers and less of those teachers that are lower on the pay scale.
Okay, so as I said, this is a consideration at this point. We have the funding. It's a 1-year situation because it's carryover funding. But even if we did it for 1 year, it would relieve the general fund of, if we're looking at the current people in those positions, possibly $390,000. Any other questions? Let's see. And now I'm turning it over to Superintendent Ford Morthell.
Sorry, Vicky has a question.
Yeah, it's a
Ah.
very quick question. I was just wondering, in the way that we've evaluated some of the various programs throughout this process, I know there's another 2 million we're going to have to cut next year. And I was wondering if maybe at some point between now and then, we can do analysis of the TSA positions in the same way that we've looked at the cost of the various sub positions. I thought I heard something like there's 180 TSAs. I don't know if that's correct. But teacher on special assignment, and it would be interesting just to see what that cost is, what those teachers are doing if we fill those positions, and just have more information about that in general when we're talking about being more efficient, potentially for next year.
Okay.
Yes, we can do that. And it's closer to 60, not 180 TSAs throughout the whole district. Most of them are pieces of positions, not whole positions also.
Thanks, that's helpful. That number seemed big.
Yes.
So one of the other things, in addition to looking at programs and previous meetings, you might recall several meetings ago, actually, one of the first things that you all asked for was a summary of our legal costs, what we were paying both in settlements as well as just for the hourly and just however many minutes worth of consultations with various legal counsels. And so you might know, if you don't know, I'll share with you that the model that Berkeley Unified uses is that we actually contract and partner with a number of different legal firms that have different specialties. And, for example, there might be a firm that SPED uses all the time. It might be a firm that I use all the time. And so there are a number of consultants that we use to inform what we do legally, but also that support us in our responses to legal cases and support settlements, et cetera. That is helpful in the sense that we have a lot of expertise, but there are some ways that model is inefficient. And there are a number of ways that it's helpful, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because it's 5:22. I just want to call out some of the ways in which it's inefficient. It's inefficient because one, you are talking to, let's say make up 15 different people who might have 15 different perspectives, who are likely not very much grounded in your values or the philosophy of your organization because they're not in the organization. One of the other inefficiencies is that they are oftentimes helping you be responsive. And though you can have consult, because there's not a person you just call immediately or talk to immediately, the preventative part of legal counsel doesn't always really materialize, which means that we're oftentimes calling them once we are in a pickle, if you will, or helping us address an issue versus just having, that time to say, hey, for them to say, hey, don't do that. If you do that, this might happen. So legal counsel is helpful, not just in terms of dealing with, settlements or dealing with issues or complaints. They're also super helpful on that preventative end. And when you're working with lots of different law firms, that part doesn't always come to bear. You notice yourselves just how high our legal costs were. And I remember that Pauline and Emily shared with you all, they were just focusing on one set of legal costs, the costs that are paid for out of general funds and a specific line of general funds. One of the things that we are considering is thinking about how can we offset those expenses and really bring in that personalized approach, really bring in folks who are aligned with our values, and also bring in that preventative piece that we don't always get to capitalize on by having general counsel or in-house legal support. That doesn't mean that we would not work with those other law firms that have specific expertise. It means that we would have 1 or 2 point people, our own people that could, get that expertise and bring it to us, but we would also just have a person we could use immediately. I'm going to let Yasmina share a little bit more, but what we know is that a lot of our costs can be, what we think is that a lot of our costs can be mitigated if we did have that preventative lens and that consultation that was regular, but that was not, I'm charging you $400, $500 every time you call me, right? I think just knowing that sometimes we might hesitate to call or not call as often. And so one of the things that I'm considering, and I will bring you back a lot more detail, is this idea of in-house general counsel. There are not a lot of districts actually that have an in-house counsel. It's typically reserved for those larger districts. When I came to this role, one of the first things I noticed was that we didn't have a curriculum and instruction department, and we've now addressed that. And the second one was that we didn't have general counsel. But I wanted to wait and kind of do Ms. Mildred, some data collection and some observation to figure out if my desire to have general counsel was more because I've come from those large districts like Oakland or San Francisco, or was because it was really a need in Berkeley. And what we see when we look at our legal costs is that we are, we're not at the same level as those larger districts. We do have a significant amount of legal costs that we pay as a district. And so it's something that I want to further explore as a way to offset and minimize those expenses, but it will be a strategy that requires us to pay something up front, either for a position or positions. So teasing you with that now, we'll come back with a lot more detail and information about what the different models can look like and costs, but wanted to put that out there because I know that there's others of you who are on SBAC who also had similar concerns and similar requests for us to explore this general counsel idea. The other thing associated with legal costs is the cost of investigations. And I'm going to let Yasmina, who's over our Office of Civil Rights Department, who deals with most all of our investigations, right there next to Sam, to talk to you about that. But we are, again, seeing something similar in that we have high costs of having to pay one of these many legal firms that we work with to support us in investigations. And so another consideration is in-house legal support, but also adding an additional investigator to our Office of Civil Rights. And so with that, I will introduce to some of you all, and reintroduce to others, Yasmina, who can tell you more about the investigations. Next slide, please.
Here I go.
Yasmina, are you here?
Awesome. I am here. I am here. Hi, everyone. I've seen some of you before, others not, but thank you for inviting me tonight. Just to talk a little bit about our investigation. So the Civil Rights and Compliance Office of Berkeley Unified School District is composed of 3 people, one investigator, me as the compliance officer, and our admin assistant that does most of our intake. And so usually, last year we did not have an investigator. So this is my 3rd year in the district. First year we did have an investigator. We usually get maybe about 110, 120 complaints per year. Last year we did not have an investigator, so we had to engage an independent contractor that helped with some of our investigations. And then we leaned a lot on our law firms to conduct more complex investigations and all investigations that would take more time. And so one of the requests that came both from our board as well as the Gender Equity and Sexual Harassment Advisory Committee of the superintendent was to kind of see how much money we are spending on outside investigations and to see if it makes sense that we actually bring that in-house as opposed to sending it outside. And so last year when we didn't have an investigator, it was $179,000. I have to say, very shocked by that number. This year we do have a full-time investigator, but by the end of February, we were already reaching $100,000, or we surpassed $100,000 in engagement of outside counsel to conduct investigations. So the benefit of having another investigator in-house would not only be to kind of offset some of the legal fees expenses that we're currently spending, but it would also could potentially also speed up our processing times. So this year has been very unprecedented number of complaints. So the days of 110, 120 are long gone and over. And so it takes us much longer to process complaints. And so some of the complaints that we do have to address have a very difficult procedure. And these are our Title IX complaints, and they sometimes take 9-10 months to complete because they're very thorough and very complicated. So having said all of that, I wanted to kind of provide you with the numbers so that it could be something we could consider in kind of moving forward and trying to rebalance our budget.
Any questions about that? Again, Yasmin and I just wanted to come back and respond to the high the cost of the legal support. We appreciate all the legal support we get, by the way, I should have said that. We have some amazing teams that work with us, but we also recognize how we might be able to reduce some of those legal costs by both thinking about bringing someone in-house, full-time, part-time, but also by increasing our investigation capacity. So with that, we'll take any questions, and then we're wanting to again say we're going to come back to you with official proposals. I see Rebecca and then Nicole.
So I'm thrilled. I think you actually have complaints on top of complaints that are about the timeline, right? I think that
Correct. Rightfully so. Just
so
Matt.
I just think on sort of all the levels, right, of our goal to take care of and hold our kids, right? And being the responsive beings we want to be and the realities that you've had to deal with. I think this is the best, smartest. I could go on. I'm going to come and speak at the board meeting for behalf of GSHAC tonight. But I just think it's so smart because it's going to give you more legs on the ground, which you absolutely deserve. But it's also going to take better care of our kids and save us money. It feels like such a lovely win-win-win. So thank you.
I thought I saw another, I think it was Nicole's hand was next, I think.
Oh, thank you. I dropped my hand because I figured I was going to ask some numbers, and I'm sure they'll be part of the proposal next time. So thank you.
Yes, we will definitely. I mean, for the investigation, you see what we're spending, and you could probably immediately see how that could be a full-time person. For the general counsel, yes, I'm gonna not only come to you all with numbers, but scenarios of what it could look like. You know, when I was in Oakland and San Francisco, we had a person and actually, quite honestly, a whole department, right? We are a lot smaller than both Oakland and San Francisco, so we might think about, hey, we'll have one full-time person, but there's also other models that we could explore. So I'm going to bring you back those models and the costs of those models. But I think these two were important for us to give you this kind of preview of, because it's not intuitive in that we're going to spend money to save money. And so, you know, wanted to make sure that that's very clear to the group, but we do think that these two efforts will save us actually significant amounts of money in the long run. I think I saw one more hand. Let's see. Oh, hi, Mr. Dan.
Hey there. Having gone through this multiple times, make sure you fully cost all of the pieces in the model, because you have a general counsel. They're going to farm everything out anyway on any specialized issues. So you may get much better service. You may have much better legal care. Whether you're really going to save money, I think that's doubtful. But I think you need to fully cost all of this, not just, you know, what you're paying today, what in-house is, but you also have to add in what the in-house counsel is going to start farming out, because that's what they do.
You are absolutely right. I don't know. I'm not saying you're absolutely right about your doubt, but I will say to you that we do need to collect a lot more. We're going to come back to you with a lot more data than just the cost. One of the things that we're going to do is the various legal firms that we work with. We want to understand what work they are doing for us. What are themes and trends in terms of what, you know, who do we call the most and for what? We want to understand what the costs and expenses are for current projects and cases, if you will, but also what they anticipate. So there's some work we're going to do with our teams, our legal teams, to inform what we bring back to you as well. But you are absolutely right that it could be a cost savings. I know you're doubtful, but it also can, you know, just be more of the same with a person for us to, you know, the person that makes the calls for us instead of us all calling ourselves. I will say, and I'm probably completely biased, which is why it took me 2 years to just really wait and listen and learn before making this proposal, that there is something to be said about having a person or people who are on the team who know your work and know your values and who can, you know, advise you ahead of time on things aligned to those values and aligned to your belief systems. And I do trust that all of our firms that we work with have our best interest in mind. And sometimes I wonder if at every instance that is the case, right? And so sometimes I'm like, you probably could have wrapped this up faster, but I'm paying you hourly and maybe you take slower. So I know there's a lot of things to consider. as we think about this, but I definitely take your point and we'll come back with as much data and information as possible so we can make an informed decision. Woo, it's 5:35, you all. Okay, so we're moving on. I didn't see any other hands for this one. Again, we'll come back with a proposal the next time. We're gonna move, Pauline's about to put it all together. Pauline is really excited, you all, because she put some clip art. So
Listen.
you all should give her a virtual
Listen. Yes.
I am. I'm still in the meeting, but I can't sit on the bed, and it's just gonna not comfortable.
Miss
So,
Natasha, Miss Natasha, mute your phone.
oh, my apologies.
No worries. Hello. Go ahead,
Hi,
Pauline.
Natasha. Hi, Natasha.
Hello.
So I'm attempting to put this all together and just exactly where we are in terms of the target and where we are in terms of what we had proposed. So our target was 7.1. It was an ongoing target, ongoing budget balancing solutions of 7.1. What we took to the board and got board approval for was 4.7 ongoing, one time 2.2. So on the next slide, this is a reminder of the $6.9 million in case you need a refresher. So you can open the link and look at that. So what we had also talked about were some proposals that we had put on the table that we're gonna bring back to SBAC to be voted on. So that's 0.2, one time for cooking and gardening. And then if we do the staffing at school sites based on the formula, that's 0.2 ongoing. And then this is a total of the prior proposals that we'll be bringing to you to vote on. So where does that leave us? The proposals total the 4.9, 2.4, 7.3 in proposals. So in excess of the target, the total is 0.2, but you can see that point on the ongoing amount, we're short 2.2, but one time we have the 2.4. So not the best of all situations. We are in excess of the 7.1 by 0.2, but not all of it is ongoing. 2.2 is we're short 2.2 ongoing, and we're over 2.4 one time. So that's what we have actually put on the table so far in terms of proposals. Any questions on that before I take us to the next slide? No questions, great. All right, so at our May meeting, we had proposed revenue.
It did not say she cannot have a lay.
Mildred,
mute.
yourself.
So I have a link to the presentation and we can revisit some of the things we talked about. But this is the putting it all together for our new proposal. So I'll take us quickly. What time is it? Yeah, I have time. So I can take us quickly through this presentation as a reminder to look at what revenue we found, and this is only for the unrestricted general fund, and the asks that were unfunded for 23, 24, and 24, 25. So you can see, and this was at the last meeting, so it should still be pretty fresh in your minds. The $200,000 that we were thinking about, we had several proposals for revenue, but only $200,000 could be scored against the unrestricted general fund, and this thing is jumping around. I can use that. So the 173 is the $200,000, and that was an unspent funding from our learning recovery block grant. It was earmarked for the meat council, so we can look at how that relates. All the expenses and revenues actually align, are explained below. So we also looked at new asks for 23, 24. There was a settlement of $50,000 that was coming from another funding source. SPED had an additional ask of $800,000, which has already gone into the budget because he needed it for this year to pay bills. Vote 16, sorry, for $30,000. We may get Oakland to assist. This $5,000, I think we no longer need that, right, Sam? but it's still here, so we may amend this. BSAP, the amount that we have to repay on a one-time basis is $350. And this congressional hearing, congratulations, Superintendent Ford Morthell did an excellent job and along with her other presenters, so congrats. This amount may have been largely overstated, but we're still waiting to get the legal costs. I mean, here we go with legal again. But this was very specialized legal costs that we needed for a very unusual situation. So so looking at these, a subtotal in terms, it was a total of 1.3 million, 800 ongoing, 835 ongoing, and 450 on a one-time basis, and we found a home for $50,000. And then what we looked at in 24-25, the curriculum adoption, and again, some of this landed with a funding source, but I'm just giving you the overall picture for asks and other funding sources. So we looked at the LCAP, and this has to be scored for that particular purpose based on the committee's input. But at that time, this is what we were thinking in terms of the $555,000. SPED has additional asks for caseloads of $412,000 ongoing, but there were also savings in terms of hiring internal staff instead of working with consultants. Ed Services had $143,000 for their assessment subscriptions, and the staffing for additional students, teachers that came from other funding sources. So we're using our other funding sources for that. I don't see an amount scored for the assistant, and I'm not sure if that's an error. But then this is the peer counselor that we are highlighting above. I'll take questions when I'm finished with this slide. And then athletics, there was an increase for an athletic director, operational expenses for athletics, and coaching stipends. So these were the additional asks for 24-25, and our total asks are listed in row 45. So this has not been brought to you for voting, for your input. This was something that first showed up at the last meeting. So we will be revisiting that. And I'll take us back to our presentation. And this is the summary. So with our new proposals and our asks for 23-24 and 24-25, we're looking at $1.2 million and 0.6 in one time for a total of 1.6 million that we have not officially, this is a net impact. We have not officially addressed it as yet. And this is the net impact on the unrestricted general fund. But we're also looking at our current expenditures, what we have not, where do we think we're going to have savings. So we will be unpacking this in more detail and sharing it with the group. I see 3 hands and I can't see who you are. Let me see. Let's take Nicole first. Vicky, you're always asking questions. Nicole hardly does. So let's do Nicole, Natasha, and we let Vicky wait for last.
Okay. If you're cool with that, Vicky. I love Vicky's questions. She always asks the questions I was going to ask.
She's probably got, well, so you know you have a chance to ask yours, Nicole.
Just so you
She's
know,
smarter than
she's
I am.
not modeling what happens in our classrooms, just so you know.
I'm not a teacher. I'm sorry. No, I'm not.
So my
Yes,
question
Nicole.
is, or it's more of a request, is that maybe the right time is when you come back with the various contractors' proposals, but I would ask that when we do review those contractor proposals, if it's at the meeting on the 22nd, that you include my proposal for exchanging some of those contractor services in exchange for expanding the bridge program. And I'd love to have a discussion at that time. I apologize that I wasn't able to go through that in detail, but I'd love to have that discussion then and consider that as one of the options.
Okay, sure.
and
take
and the
notes.
associated net savings.
Okay,
Great.
thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Natasha?
Hi, and I apologize if this has come up before, but I don't think it has. Just thinking about BSEP and funds that were set aside for the cost of putting BSEP on the ballot this past March. I don't know if you've received yet the bill from the county registrar as to the ultimate cost of, because that's a substantial portion of what the funds set aside were for, is what it costs to put on the ballot, and that amount always varies, of course, as you know, by what else was on the ballot, because they share out the costs overall. Just wondering if that's on your list of things to check, and if that might potentially help things at all.
Yeah, we have not touched that that unspent amount. We're leaving it to actually wait for the invoice. So we are aware of it. It's set aside. It has its own little whatever identifier. So we are aware of it, and it is a pot of money that we're not going to touch until we get the invoice.
Okay, I'm hoping it'll be a savings. Thanks.
Hopefully it will be a savings. Thanks, Natasha. Vicky.
Yes, thank you. At the last meeting, when we presented the upcoming and increased expenses and asks, there was a link to a presentation that discussed the special education costs. And Sean had then told me that that was an internal document that I did not have access to. And so I'd like to request that maybe he come to our next meeting when we dig into this to talk a little bit about those expenses, because I know he's, brought some proposals of ways to save money. And I'm now conflating this with BSEP, but bringing some things in house, and that all that says is 800K for contractors. And, that's a lot of money and it only says contractors. So it would be nice to know, what some of those expenses are. And then, so that's it.
So Vicky, you remember there are two proposals that SPED did in terms of cost savings. One was in phase 1 or phase 2, and this is another proposal that he has. So we, to Nicole's point, we want to acknowledge the contribution that SPED is making to our budget balancing solutions. Even though there's increased costs, we're trying to be intentional in terms of savings. So there were two asks. So are you talking about the one that was just in the 24-25?
So no, I'm more concerned with the 800K bill that says contractors that was already spent this year, and wondering what that is.
That's for the SPG program. And that program is a very expensive program, and we don't fully fund it at the beginning of the year because they can be replaced by staff. So if we get staff, we kind of reduce their programming.
Okay.
So we kind of cover all of our contracts, on a monthly basis, just to kind of make sure we can cover our costs, but we also monitor them closely for savings. So SPG wasn't fully funded when the contract came in, but we have since determined that the $800,000 is needed to pay existing invoices.
And then I don't know if Samantha is still here, but SPGs, my understanding is speech pathologists and maybe other positions. Are we making any efforts to hire some of those in-house versus contracting them? And I would just be curious to know.
I can get you data, Vicky, but the majority of our SPG contract, yes, they used to be known as Speech Pathology Group. They've changed their name now. It's the same initials, but a different title. The majority of what they provide to us now are for special education assistants and what are called RBTs, but which are like behavioral techs.
Okay.
And so that's what they provide to us, the majority of the contracts. But I can get you more accurate numbers and more information. But yes, we are actively hiring speech pathologists and psychologists to reduce how many we have on contract.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Natasha, is your hand up from a new question? Oh, let's go. Okay, so I think that brings us to our questions and discussions which we've been having. Any additional questions at this time? So let's look at next steps and our meetings that we're proposing. So
So first of all, so one, we want to show this slide first and acknowledge that technically per our agreements today was and is supposed to be our last meeting. And we again applaud and appreciate the hard work you've done in partnership with us to get us to that 6.9 million. And we know that there's still work for us to do. And so what we're asking is that we have 2 additional meetings, that we at the very least hold 2 additional meetings. Both on Wednesdays, just to stay consistent. We're asking that our next gathering be on Wednesday, May 22nd at 4 o'clock. That is a board meeting night. And so you are likely all coming to the board meeting anyway, or I don't know, we have to go. So it will have to end at 5:30 because that's when our closed sessions begins. And so what we're asking is that we can come back together and we'll follow up on those, make some official proposals to you all, but also follow up on some of the questions that you had. And then also similarly, Wednesday, May 29th from 4 to 5:30, again, another board meeting evening. And so we're hoping to have a 90-minute oh, we went over. It's almost 6 o'clock. We're usually over at 5:30. Anyway, we were hoping to schedule them from 4 to 5:30. So if we can get just a show of hands of folks that can make at the very least the 22nd work, that'd be really helpful. You can use real hands or you can use virtual hands. But we hope to get, if not all of you, a pretty decent turnout of you. Just so that we can move forward. Oh, look at y'all like these meetings, huh? I know, I can tell Jocelyn, I'm sorry, she'd be really excited to come to these meetings. You're not excited?
doesn't.
Rita likes these meetings. Thank you, Rita. I'm looking. Some of you guys put the check marks. Some, like, y'all got used to voting. Some of you put the thumbs and the hand. Lisa is deciding. Miss Beatrice is still deciding. But Lindsay, yep, you're in. Okay, so I think we have a number of y'all, a good chunk of y'all who could come. Again, these are recorded. Ms. Beatrice can come in by audio. But yeah, we appreciate you holding both of those. We're going to ask Ms. Vivian to send you a hold for both dates, but for sure the 22nd. If we can get through everything by the 22nd, we will. Doubtful. But we will then see you next week. We would love to have an in-person meeting. We'll figure that out later. But for now, I want to just thank you all for your time. And not put your hands down because I can't tell if you have questions or if you're still saying you can come to that. Okay. Thank you all for your time. Again, we're going to send you a calendar invite for the 22nd and a hold for the 29th. And we will see you all back here next week.
I didn't finish my next step slide.
Oh, no, that's right. Now that's the next step slide. She's going to tell you what we're going to do when we see you next week. Sorry, Paula.
Right. So I'll be going to the workshop for May 21st. So I'll have additional information based on what I know Matt had a question on that. We talked about the additional meetings. We're going to be finalizing our budget balancing possibilities and get SBAC to vote on proposals. Your vote will be then taken to the board for them to vote on the proposals from this committee. And the board will also vote on LCAP and the district's budget. And as a reminder, the governor's, Dan has his hand up. Hi, Dan. Oh, he doesn't. And then, of course, the governor's budget, which is due before June 15th, may change our assumptions. And if it's a significant change, then we'd have to do what's called a 45-day revision to our budget. So that's it. And we have 6 minutes to spare. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions or so Anika, anything to wrap it up or?
I've done my wrapping. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, everybody. So I will see you on the 22nd.
Yes, y'all have a good night.
And we can email Vivian or me actually if you have any questions or anything. So, all right, thanks guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.